Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to welcome 400 guests from around the world today for an important conversation about UN Women. My name is Meredith Jacobs, and I am CEO of Jewish Women International. JWI, which was originally known as B'nai B'rith Women, is a 125-year-old Jewish women's organization. We create awareness, education, and advocacy initiatives to help realize a world free of violence against women and girls. For us, the brutal and barbaric attacks of October 7th and the ongoing violence perpetrated by Hamas on the hostages is deeply personal. On October 24th, after 2 weeks of silence by UN Women, JWI began collecting signatures for a letter written by Israeli women, women who are experts on international law, national security, sexual violence, asking various UN organizations, including the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, special rapporteurs on violence against women and girls, on torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, and UN Women. And we asked them to unequivocally speak out against Hamas. The letter compared these crimes to Rwanda and the Holocaust, and it specifically asked UN Women to not only speak out, but to do all they can to release the hostages. But as you all know, this letter was met with deafening silence. One of the authors of the letter, Dr. Kochav Elkayan Levy, went on to form the Civil Commission on October 7th, Crimes by Hamas Against Women and Children, to collect evidence, even though there was immediate proof of these crimes, video evidence that was taken and distributed by the terrorists, survivor testimony, bodies described by Zaka and other first responders, any of which would have been sufficient had these crimes occurred to any other people. And still it took 57 days after October 7th for UN Women to issue a statement, and then only after public pressure, and only then immediately before the planned event at the UN by Sheryl Sandberg, the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Philanthropies, and major Jewish women's organizations. And yet, even with all that, the response by UN Women was tepid at best, and we believe speaks to an extreme bias against Israel. So today, we're going to unpack UN Women, who they are, their stated purpose, why their statements and actions matter, and about the current investigation in Israel by the UN Special Envoy on Sexual Violence. What should we be listening for and watching for? And what steps can each of us take individually and collectively to ensure global leaders both acknowledge the crimes of October 7th and take appropriate action against Hamas? I'm joined today by an unbelievably impressive international panel. I'm going to introduce them briefly, and then we're going to turn to our questions. Ambassador Meryl Frank was appointed United States Ambassador to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women by President Barack Obama. Currently, she is president of Makeda Global Network, a consulting firm focusing on women's leadership and political participation. She is a former member of JWI's Board of Trustees and the author of the new book, Unearthed, which is a powerful memoir about her family's experience during the Holocaust. And it was described in a way that I find particularly relevant. How can we honor these memories while keeping them from consuming us? And how do we teach our children about tragedy? Thank you, Meryl. Danielle Ofek is an Israeli activist and pioneering figure in tech and social entrepreneurship, known for her dynamic approach to gender parity and women's rights. She founded Angle, an initiative challenging the prevalent misinformation and biases in the reporting and responses to October 7th. The hashtag #MeTooUnlessYouAreAJew campaign is one of Angle's projects. Catherine Perez-Shakdam is a distinguished research fellow at the American Center for Levant Studies and serves as the director of Forward Strategy Limited, a specialized consultancy focusing on political and media strategies across the UK, Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the Indo-Pacific region. She gained global recognition in 2021 for her decade-long undercover investigation within the Iranian regime, which led to groundbreaking insights into its inner workings. And finally, Liraz Charhi, an acclaimed Israeli actress, singer, and dancer. Internationally, she is best known for her role as a Mossad agent in the acclaimed Apple TV series Tehran. If you have not watched, it is a must-watch. I can't wait for season 3. A Persian Jew, Liraz has also released several successful singles and Persian albums and served in the IDF military band. Liraz, we're actually going to begin with you. Your parents left Iran for Israel before the revolution. Can you speak to what it's like now as an Israeli woman with your unique understanding of Iran? Can you share what Hamas means for women and how you are using your voice in this moment?
Oh, hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you. And thank you for inviting me. So I grew up to both parents who immigrated from Iran back in the 70s before the Iranian Revolution to Israel. Very quick, we became family. I had this double heritage of being Iranian girl inside home and outside. I was very Israeli. This both extreme complex characters wanted to meet the true me, and it was very hard to find the way to dig in my heritage because unfortunately we cannot visit Iran, and I grew up with so many beautiful stories about Iran, but I couldn't get there. So via music I understood that women are muted for the last 44 years in Iran. They are not able to sing, they are not able to do so many things that us free women can do. And because of this fact, and because of my longing to Iran that I don't know, and I do know, I've decided to dedicate my albums to them. My parents left Iran because anti-Semitism, they could not be Jewish in any Iranian neighborhood. They needed to escape from one to another. When they taught me how is it to be in Israel, in a free country, when you can be Jewish, I really relied on the fact that I am free as a Jewish, and also my children that will come will be free and will not suffer from anti-Semitism and from the reason that my parents left their country and kind of cut their roots. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And we are in this time that I'm singing to free Iranian women, and it changed. I sing for every woman all the time. In my shows, I put a big flag of Iran with woman life freedom in like a rose gold, big letters. But now it's changed because my sisters are kidnapped and they're in hostages for so many days. And we are trying to do so many things to get them out. And I know we are very powerful, us women, and we can do magic. Danielle did magic in a very, very short time with UN Women. And really, I don't think there is an Israeli woman who doesn't speak up asking, where are all women organizations? Why they're being so silent? Why they're not helping us to bring our sisters home? I'm talking about all the hostages, but we were in the army as Israeli women. We are struggling here to be mother and to have career under missiles attack from war to war, breastfeeding our babies in the shelters for years. Since I know myself, my daughter, she's almost 10. It's been so many wars that I needed to take her to the shelter. I don't want to be her mother and to be the grandmother to her children and to take them to the shelter. We need to change this game. And this game changed in October 7th when it was the first time that Hamas kidnapped men and women and children. And we cannot make this as a habit, like we have missiles It cannot be our normal day. It is crazy that the world is being silenced when our sisters are there. I know they're fighters. We all have been in the army. We all held weapons and we know how to fight, and we are emotional, very, very, very strong. We're super women, the Israeli women. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm proud of our women, but I don't think they have any force at this point, if they are there at this point, if they are alive, if they are their health, their I don't know, the emotional and the sexual abuse that they've been through. I'm very worried about them. There is not one day that I can open my eyes in the morning and being shocked and panic about our sisters. We need to bring them home. We need to do anything we can do. And I know us women can do a massive energy movement to change something. It is so important.
Liraz, thank you. Thank you for so beautifully and poignantly and powerfully reminding us why we're here today, why we're speaking out, and just know that everyone on this call is with you and with Israel and with our sisters and brothers who are being held hostage.
It is important to every one of us to continue doing whatever we can do for them, to change the situation. I mean, once it's here, and you can be even everywhere, that they can kidnap girls, women, rape them. It can be outside of Israel as well. We need to have a massive action to change this.
And they've said they'll do it again. They've told us, when someone tells you who they are, listen. Danielle,
Yes, and also took videos and was very proud of abusing our sisters. Yes.
Yeah. Danielle, I want to turn it to you now. Your hashtag #MeToo Unless You're a Jew captured global attention. I do want to be clear that the hashtag is not about the organization Me Too International, but it's about the message behind Me Too, that we stand together with victims and survivors of sexual violence, and that they have voice and agency. Your social media campaign stating UN Women, your silence is unforgivable, ignited global cries for change. I'd love for you to share a little bit about why you focused on UN Women. What would have been different had they spoken out immediately and unequivocally? And what do you think must be changed?
Thank you, Meredith. So thank you so much, Meredith, for creating this event. And thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. So first, Meredith, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a social and tech entrepreneur. This is my fourth social initiative. And as a tech entrepreneur and as an entrepreneur in general, if something disrupts me, I act immediately. And you know, I am a solution driven. So following the horrific massacre on October 7, I established and founded Angel, an advocacy group, and of course, Me Too Unless You're a Jew. I focused on UN Women for several reasons. You know, the UN Women has the responsibility to speak up for all women. This is the duty. And their actions don't align with their mission statement. And they still keep silent. The main reason I focused on UN Women, and this one is particularly problematic because they are role model for so many women's organizations around the globe, around the world, and considered to be the gold standard of women's advocacy. They are an international institute considered a trustworthy reliable, and unbiased organization, which they are not, as we see. UN Women's actions make it clear that their agenda aligns with the problematic groups at the expense of women and girls in Israel. We saw it in their reports published on October 20th, if you read it, and lately on January 20 also, which was highly problematic. I encourage you also to read my respond to their latest report published on my LinkedIn yesterday. If you look at their social media, for example, it looks as if they are UN women of Gaza. Post after post, highlighting data from Hamas, while saying little to nothing about Israeli women and girls. When UN Women published a false and one-side report, it creates a huge problem for Israeli advocacy. UN Women is clearly not for all women. We need to take care of this now. And I believe this is an issue that needs to concern all of humanity. In a few minutes, Kat, our head of communication, will speak about our upcoming events and the next steps and solutions we suggest. And until now, we are working with zero budget. We are already making a great change, and we want to continue. Continue to push and to doing it harder. We have a plan, and we need your help and support. And thank you so much, Meredith, for the time.
Thank you, Danielle. Someone just asked if there was going to be anyone from UN Women on the call, not from the current grouping of UN Women, but we do have Ambassador Frank here to speak. Meryl, you were part of the UN Commission on the Status of Women when UN Women was being created. I wonder if you could kind of give us a little bit of history. Why was it founded? What is it supposed to do? And what's the reality today when it comes to UN Women in Israel? And of course, please share, talk a little bit about the research you're currently conducting.
Okay, well, I thought that I might start by letting you know that Pramila Patten is there today. That's the Special Representative on Sexual Violence, and she's an Undersecretary General at the UN. And she's there in Israel for the week investigating the rapes that were committed by Hamas. And her statements have been very supportive, which is great. She says that, I'm going to quote this, more than solidarity, we really need to ensure that there's justice at the end of the day and put this heinous crime, an end to these heinous crimes. So she was talking about Hamas, she was talking about rape and the brutality, which is all very good. She's going to be meeting with survivors and witnesses and treatment professionals, representatives of the police and security forces, and also with government and civil society. And she's brought a team of experts with her and will be reporting to the Security Council. I've heard in February, but I'm not sure about that. And this is really significant. I bring this up because you all know that Israel has had a very troubled relationship with the UN. Particularly the UNHCR, the Human Rights Council, where they are brought up. They have a standing resolution against Israel. And I have to say, even when I was ambassador, I had the great honor of voting against one of the resolutions that came was a resolution about Israel's treatment of Palestinian women. And the reason that the US objected was that it was the only country highlighted. And it's brought and voted on by countries with terrible records on this. So I was very honored to be able to make this statement on the behalf of the United States and to vote against it. You may know, I think this year there were 13 resolutions in the General Assembly against Israel, and I think one against another country. This sets us up for understanding why, in the first place, women, particularly Israeli women, Jewish women, and others who are paying attention, were looking to UN Women to make a statement. Now, UN Women was created in 2010. And the idea was that it would be a place to gather all of the information on women and to advocate for them in kind of the same way that UNICEF is there for children. I thought that I would read to you, let me get this out of the way, what their 4 strategies were. The women, their first priorities are women to lead, participate, and benefit equally in governance systems, that women have income security, decent work, and economic autonomy. All women and girls live a life free from all forms of violence. Women and girls contribute to and have greater influence in building sustainable peace and resilience, and benefit equally from the prevention of natural disasters, conflicts, and humanitarian action. Now, the UN Women themselves is not the agency that does the investigation. That would fall under different agencies and special rapporteurs. But I'm not sure that that's the issue. The issue was that, when we created UN Women, and I think women all around the world look to UN Women as sort of an unbiased moral beacon. And so their statements are listened to, just as Danielle was saying. They set they are the organization that we would look to for a statement. Now, their statements on Gaza were warranted, but they don't mention the victims of rape explicitly, and that is hurtful, clearly, to many women. But that's also a political statement. And I believe that I'm being generous with UN Women, that when I say that we don't know what the protocol is, we don't know how long it takes for them to respond generally. But there was one incident that just didn't smell right. And that was when they posted a tweet condemning the rapes and attributing them to Hamas. And then it was deleted. And it was replaced with a tweet that didn't have Hamas in it. Now, I know at the UN that every single word matters. Every word that I said had to be approved by the White House and the State Department. The issuing of a wrong word can cause an international incident. So it's a very bureaucratic place, and everything is looked over very carefully. Now, I was with the US mission, not the UN, but at the UN, it's the same thing. There are certain words, for example, you can't use the word gender. And that was when I arrived, I got a list of words that I could not use. It's just a tremendously bureaucratic place. And I think that what was missed here, it could have been that the other thing that they were saying was that it's not a program area. Israel isn't a program area of UN Women. That means that they don't have people on the ground to report to them. But, this didn't really need that. And I think that what we need to understand here is that I believe UN Women did not understand that they were dealing with a population that has been decried by the UN over the years, where you have the UNHCR with their resolutions against Israel over and over and over again, without acknowledging that other countries do even worse. And so there is already a sense of that we are not considered in the same, that we as Jews, we as Israelis, are not taken seriously, and that there's a political decision being made. Now, a deletion. As I said before, there was this post that had Hamas recognized as the perpetrator, and then it was deleted. And that's what really struck me, that deletion. And that is so important because, even a deletion is a statement. A deletion is taking sides, and it's making, in many ways, an explicit statement. So Meredith asked me to mention the work that I'm working on. And I'm right now working with a brilliant Israeli journalist, ITA Prince Gibson. And if you haven't read her work, Google her. She has something in Moment this week and will be in Foreign Policy next week. She's a serious journalist that takes her investigations very seriously. And, in this atmosphere that we're in, where there is just so much disinformation, it's really important to find someone that you trust or a source that you trust, and to follow it there rather than on TikTok. And we find that so many people are getting their information there. So what ITA and I are especially interested in looking at is, what is the response of international humanitarian organizations? What is their protocol? If we understand this, if we understand how they usually respond to these things, to these sorts of incidences, then we can really make a judgment about where we stand, and if there are political ramifications of when they make a statement, how they make a statement. We are not looking to establish that there were these brutal rapes, that ITA and I. But again, what the response is, what the protocols of the UN are, and how this, for example, there are the rapes going on in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, and it's over 300 from everything that I've read. And in Sudan and any other country that's plagued with this. And we need to understand how they react. And in fact, if they're reacting properly, do they understand that it's important for women to have their backs, to be able to speak out on this, because so often women won't speak themselves. And having an agency that's an international agency doing this work is of most importance to them. Again, there are some other things too. And I did want to mention that while we will be looking at how this happened and why this happened and what are some conclusions that we can come to that may help in the future, I want to give some credit to these women that have been doing this work, because what you've done is you've shown a light on rape as a weapon of war. And it's not something that many people know about, and they do now. You do not see articles, I'm sorry, about Ethiopia or Sudan and the rapes going on there. But now we have an interest, we have an understanding that this is a tactic of war and how brutal it can be. And that is one of the side benefits of the work you've done. The other is to shine a light on what is the moral role of international organizations. And I think this may have made the hostages safer, because now they know that there's an eye on their activity. And another thing that it made very clear is that their inaction is overtly hurtful. That we are, in particular, everyone would be hurt by this, but they're talking about a population that has to deal with anti-Semitism regularly, has to deal with the issues of Israel and the UN regularly, and also is dealing with things like Holocaust denial. So seeing denial of rape of Jewish women, falls into something that we understand and is sort of at our core, and we react to. I think that that's one thing that they did not understand. Another thing is that you've shown a light on, you've shown a light on who we are, what we want, and what their responsibilities are. And that's tremendously important. Now, Meredith, I don't know if you want me to speak now or later. on some of the actions?
Why don't we continue with you? And there are a number of important questions, I think, popping up in the chat that I hope you'll address. One is, okay, what do we do about this? And also is, if you can clarify, are you saying that somehow the UN Women's Mission does not allow them to address rape or document these horrific
acts? No, absolutely not. But it's not their role to issue reports. It's the special rapporteur. And the special rapporteur is in Israel as we're speaking, the representative.
And if you can speak, I know you and I have spoken offline about the particular leadership right now of UN Women that may be, I think you're being generous and diplomatic by saying, oh, they didn't understand how sensitive we are as a community. I would love to push back.
I think that they certainly do now.
Out. And is there something more at play here? And what can we do to change either the makeup of leadership or change UN Women so that their policies and procedures are applied to everyone equally?
Well, from my conversations with people that know UN Women well and now, is that they are not any different than what many of us are experiencing with our friends and some of us with our families, where there are real and passionate discussions about this, about everything that's going on with Israel and Gaza right now. And so I would not be surprised if within the agency there's fighting going on. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we know, we've seen, for those of you who haven't seen, there are examples of deputy directors, liking tweets that were anti-Israel, that were putting Israel in an awful situation by calling them, all the crazy things that you're hearing now about genocide and ethnic cleansing, and that's a problem. Now, the makeup of the UN Women right now, the director is a Palestinian Jordanian. There are many people on it. There are honestly many Jewish women in there, but we know that not all Jewish women will agree with us on all of this. I think that what we need to do is take this issue out of its context, in fact. Its context is war, and talk only about what happened to those women on that day, and to have UN Women focus non-politically on the issue at hand. Now, what I'm saying when I say we don't know why there was a delay in their response, and they may have, they may have only responded because of the pressure on them. But what I am saying is we need to find that out. And we need to find that out because we need to know where Israel stands. We need to know where we stand and how we're going to be able to fight it. You're in the UN. People are appointed to UN posts, which is very political. And what we need to do is talk to our representatives there, the State Department, and they all have a say in this. They all have a say. They can, if we find, in fact, and we have, this part we have time for. I'll talk a little bit about action later, but this part we have time for because we do have people, and I mentioned ITA and myself, but there's other people that are investigating now and are looking at what happened. And if we find that, in fact, they usually take 60 days to respond, then we know, okay, we're within this. I think that what we need to do is take a step back and say, still, we have some issues. Still, the issue is, why are you reporting every single day on Gaza, which is a nightmare, obviously, and not mentioning this? We also have to find out about the tweet. The tweet, I think, it's so small, but I think it's the most incriminating piece of evidence that they took it off, took Hamas out of it, and put it back. That is a political act.
I just want to ask one more quick question, then I want to make sure I turn to Kat. But there's a conversation going on in the chat about UN wanting to send inspectors into Israel and Israel denying access. Can you speak to that?
It was UNHCR, the Human Rights Council, and they have a terrible history together, UNHCR and Israel, for good reason. I mean, for good reason that Israel does not trust them. The UNHCR, the Human Rights Council, is the one that has the standing resolution against Israel and constantly has resolutions against Israel. So they don't trust that special rapporteur. And they did, in fact, ask people not to participate with them. In the case of Pramila Patten, apparently the Foreign Office invited her to Israel. And they are coordinating who she's meeting with and all of that. So this is a little bit different as a special rapporteur. It's from a different agency. And I think that they have more trust that this may be a more honest outcome. Now, I can't promise you what the outcome will be. You know, we don't know. I believe they said that they'll be reporting in February, but I'm not sure. And so we need to wait and see what that report has to say. And it may be a way for UN Women to clean up their act. And it may signal, you know, we may be focusing on something that's a broader problem there and something that they need to address.
Wonderful.
But shall I talk about the actions later?
Yeah, let's circle back to actions because I want to make sure we have time for Kat. Kat, you are bringing this now to the UK and the House of Lords. Can you share a little bit about what's planned and what you hope to accomplish?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much. And I'm very glad that there's so many people here listening to us. So thank you for attending. So what we worked on with Danielle is that obviously Danielle identified a problem with UN Women in that the response of this organization was not satisfactory and literally ignored the plight of countless Israeli women and girls, but also Jews around the world asking for reparation and justice and also acknowledgement on the international scene, and that wasn't done. And the issue, as Danielle talked about UN Women, is that their decision and whatever it is that they say, whether it's in the statement or report or the decision that they make, has a ripple effect across, you know, the advocacy world, in the sense that human rights organization, as well as a human rights advocate, will take the cue from UN Women. And if nothing is being said or done regarding the crimes that were committed against Israeli women and girls at the hands of Hamas, a terrorist organization, we need to remember that, then, you know, we need to make sure that they do. We need to hold them accountable. And so we identified the problems, and then we devised a series of solutions that we feel are actually kind of in the line of what Meryl was talking about in terms of setting up a protocol and making sure that UN Women is supposed to be an impartial organization that is apolitical. We need to make sure that there's some kind of a vetting process in terms of the leadership, number one. What would happen if they violate their mandate, which they have done many, many times over? We actually pointed that out in a series of articles. We also need to make sure that when reports are being issued or comments are being made or statements issued again, that the references that they make in terms of the data is actually accurate and vetted. So we want to make sure that we work with them to make sure that this process is actually strengthened. And that the mistake that we made in the past, not just in relation to Israel, but across the board, are being addressed and redressed so that it doesn't happen ever again. So even though the campaign, Me Too Unless You're a Jew, was obviously prompted by October 7th and what happened to Israeli women and girls, we want to make sure that our campaign also has a broader appeal and addresses everyone's injustices, and that they are being addressed as well on the same level. So it's about parity and making sure that everybody has a voice. So in terms of the event that we planned, obviously the UK for me was a natural step, not just because I live in London, but because the UK has a very long history when it comes to human rights advocacy. And of course, the UK is a funder of UN Women. And so we thought we need to add pressure. So it started off in the US, fantastic. Now we need to bring the UK on board and make sure that there's some kind of a consensus. And so we decided to take Me Too Unless You're a Jew campaign to the House of Lords and introduce Danielle to our lovely peers and MPs and policymakers and academia and think tanks, as well as human rights advocates here in the UK, because there are many. And they haven't done much in terms of speaking for Israeli women and girls, because again, they feel somewhat bullied by social media and also the media, because nobody wants to talk about Israeli women or Jewish women, because it's not a good look right now. It's not fashionable. It doesn't bring clicks, and people automatically scream, what about Palestinian women? We're not trying to ignore them, of course, but what we're trying to say is that it happened to us. We care. It needs to be talked about because crimes were committed. So on the back of this introduction of Danielle's work and campaign, we also intend to issue a policy briefing. So offering our policy recommendations into what we are asking UN Women to do and what we're calling on British policymakers to actually petition for in terms of change, to bring about tangible responses and answers to the problem that we have identified. And that will be done at the House of Commons. So we have a whole series of events that will be planned around the campaign to, number one, introduce it. Also an event prepared with the press, because we want to make sure that the press corps is actually aware of what we do and that they are aware of the responses that we're planning to bring, also aware of the work that we're doing. And which is why we need as many people as possible, as many ambassadors as possible to speak on our behalf and for our girls and women who are still held hostage by Hamas. It's important that people say their name, that they remember what happened to them, that they also understand that we're not going to stop. We're not going to let go. We're not going to forget them just because, they have. We will not. And I think this is important. And Danielle has done incredible work in putting us not just on the map. And when I say us, I'm talking about Jewish women, Israeli women, and making sure that people not afraid of us so much, but understand that, again, we're not going anywhere. And if they close the door, we'll go through a window. If they close the window, we'll find a way through a basement somewhere to come out and speak our truth. And so I want to make sure my work essentially has been to make sure that Danielle's work is elevated here in the UK and that she has as much help as possible. So I appreciate yours. We need you. We can't do it without financial support, of course, but it is a very worthy endeavor. And a lot of things have already happened on no budget at all. We're all volunteers right now. We all fell in love with the work that Danielle has done, her energy, her charisma. We believe in her. We believe in the campaign. And what we're asking of you today is to actually believe in her just as much as we do. And we've put hours, I literally put my life in, I would say in suspension right now. My kids hate me, but they understand why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for them. I'm a mother of 2 wonderful, beautiful children. And I want to make sure that the world that I give them is better than the one that we find ourselves in right now. And this is what Danielle is all about. So if you have any question, please feel free to reach us. I think that Meredith in the post-webinar email will send you our pack. I'm available 24/7, 7 days a week. If you have any question ever, please email me, WhatsApp me. I will answer, I promise you. This is one for everybody. This is a campaign that can change things dramatically because we're tackling UN Women, and the ramification of this will be forever, which is why I believe that we're going to be successful. We have to be successful. There is no alternative. And again, those events that we have planned will help in giving us not just a platform, but to really land us, at the very heart of, I would say, the human rights advocacy world in the UK, and making sure that everyone from London will hear about us and what we do and why we're doing it, most importantly. So thank you.
Catherine, thank you so much. Meryl, I want to circle back to you, if I might. The special rapporteur who is in Israel right now, once the report is released, what are our next steps? Give us a call to action following that report.
Well, I will put it in a context with some other things. Once the report is released, we'll obviously take a look at it and see where there are problems with it. And you can, JWI is now a party to the UN, am I right?
Yes.
If this is released in February, and March is the CSW meeting, we're going to have organizations giving their testimony on any number of issues. And that is really the place to take action as an organization like JWI. JWI has a really stellar history in dealing with issues of violence against women. So your standing is important. But I wanted to take a step back first and say, and focus on one thing, and that is, what is our goal? You know, right now, there's still hostages. We have 116 days. And I think that one of the things that we're very concerned about their health and that whether they have been abused or not. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that the work that you've been doing, the focus on this issue is shining a light on this, and that may keep them safer. But we shouldn't forget that we really need to work on getting those hostages released. Another thing that we need to do is support organizations in Israel. Rape crisis centers are overwhelmed right now, and they are going to need our help. We have to pressure our government. You know, we have to think about, you know, I'm not sure that having hearings on UN women at this point is moving anything. I'm not sure that they need to show up at a congressional hearing. Maybe they would. But what is our goal? What are we trying to do here? And I would keep the pressure on, but at the same time, wait to see this report and wait to see if it's something that we're comfortable with, that gives the dignity back to these, you know, recognizing what happened here and gave the dignity back to those unfortunate victims. And the other thing that is part of this whole thing, as I mentioned earlier, it's been able to shine a light on international rape issues. And this is important because, as I said, I don't know what the protocol is yet. I don't know how long it takes them to respond. But if it takes them as long as it did in this case, when we're dealing with Boko Haram or ISIS or El Shabaab, who I've had my own issues with, in Sudan or Ethiopia or wherever else in the world, we have to talk with UN Women about how long it takes them and why it takes them so long. Now, if we find that, in fact, they are usually responding much more quickly, then, you know, that's a whole different issue. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is joining. There's all of these women's organizations out there that have now, some have now made statements, including now. As I was looking over the course of time, there was no statement, then a statement without mentioning Hamas, and now a statement with mentioning Hamas. And much of that had to do with the women who were involved. So I would encourage the people watching to join women's organizations, even those that are not making statements, because you need to be there to encourage them to do it. And really the best thing that you can do for women is to be active. You know, and again, based on what the report is in February, if it comes out in February, is to be active the way that this group has been, to speak to your legislators about it, to write to the State Department, to make sure that our ambassador at the UN is speaking out about it, which she is, but keeping the pressure on in that way, and taking a step back from all of the TikTok and look for information that you can trust. Now, for our friends, you know, this isn't really an issue of whether you are fully supportive of Israel's work in Gaza or you are a ceasefire person. When we're talking about these brutal rapes, it means that all of us can be part of this conversation. And I would encourage you to reach out to those people that you may not agree with, or who may be saying, well, this is just Israeli government propaganda. And making sure that they understand that, in fact, Israel's government was late to address this. It was civil society that started it in Israel, but this is legitimate. And that it's so important that these victims not be seen as so many women who are victims of rape are, that they're not believed. Also, as somebody, I've been standing up for women's rights for 40 years or more. No, I think, yeah, more. You know, I can say this. UN Women has done fantastic work around the world. They need to be called out when they don't. And by doing this, and by speaking with the organizations that you're members of, and by joining organizations so that you have a voice, believe me, it's being heard there. I know that it's being heard there, but also you should know that there are other voices being heard there too, not just on the Palestinian side. I understand that the director of UN Women now has to have an armed guard because of the murder threats. So we have, our nutty people on all sides. So we need to keep sober and focused and make sure that the word gets to UN Women. But I'm pretty sure it has, and I wouldn't be surprised if they know that there are eyes on their work, that they're going to have a better outcome.
Ambassador Frank, thank you so much. I want to thank all of our panelists today for your work, for your time, for your passion. JWI's global work in this space would not be possible without partnering with Danielle and Catherine and Meryl, all of whom, as Catherine said earlier, are volunteering their time and expertise. And if we are really to do this right, if we're to bring this issue to the UK, to the EU, to help really create a global cry for change for women, we do need your help. And I do hope that following this conversation, you are all inspired to support this work. There is a link in the chat. There will be a link in the follow-up email. Any donations given using that link are specifically to fund this work. JWI will continue to share via email op-eds and debriefs such as this one, progress, share updates of the research that Ambassador Frank is undertaking, as well as any reports once they are issued by the special envoy. I want to thank our co-sponsors today, various Jewish women's foundations and giving circles, as well as our friends at Shalom Bayit and the Women's Initiative of the Jewish Federation in Brazil. I'd like to wish all of you safety and peace. Let's bring the hostages home. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.